Welcome back to Long Distance Worklife, where we help you lead, work, and thrive in remote and hybrid teams. I'm Marissa Eikenberry, a fellow remote worker, and joining me is my co-host and remote work expert, Wayne Jamel. Hi, Wayne.
Hello, Marissa. How the heck are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am well today.
Good deal, because today we're going to be talking about leadership and conflict and how we can handle disagreeable policies or unpopular policies.
Yeah, it's part of being the manager, right? When everything's going great, being the boss is fabulous. When
Right.
policies come down and you as the manager are expected to inform the team about them and even worse, enforce them, it can be super, super unpleasant. And when you are not in the same place as the people that you're working with, it can be unpleasant and stressful, and more stressful, to be specific.
Right. So given, that we have remote and hybrid teams now, and so it's way different than, walking into the office in the conference room and being like, hey guys, here's this decision that's been made from on high. So what are some effective communication strategies that managers can use with their remote and hybrid teams when explaining some unpopular policies to their team?
Well, let's take a step back. When everybody's in the office, right, there's this immediate conversation and kerfuffle, and then there's cubicle conversations and,
Slack messages,
squawking and whining and people going out for beverages later and, like that. When you are not physically co-located with your coworkers and with your team, that same stuff happens, but you don't know what's going on. You aren't privy to the chat conversations and the texts and the whining and complaining. There is so much, as always with long distance leadership, there is so much white space that you don't really know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so the number one communication thing is to do it. Communication is, in fact, a two-way process. It's delivering the message, but it's also listening. And it's listening to what people say and what they don't say.
Right.
If you are met with dead silence, there's stuff you need to learn.
Well, and you mentioning dead silence, that also is a good point too, how we're delivering this message. We've talked about mediums of communication before, but it sounds like, if you're going to deliver something that might be unpopular, probably needs to be on a video call, yes?
Well, certainly you want it to be as rich as circumstances demanded. Mm-hmm. A video call is a great way to break the news, if it's possible to do it that way.
Right.
And you need something they can refer back to, a written document that it says this is what is and isn't covered.
Okay.
Because when you make an announcement, particularly one that is unpopular or has emotional tripwires attached to it, there's no guarantee they're going to get it the first time to really understand what's going on. So the communication strategy as such, there are a few steps that you have to take. The first is you better make sure you understand the change.
Right.
And that's not just whether or not you agree with it. You may or may not, but you darn well better understand it. And there are several levels to this. You need to understand technically what is changing or not, what is going to be the difference. You need to understand as best you can, why is this happening?
Right.
The moment I became a real grown-up adult worker was the day I realized that every decision, no matter how idiotic, was made for a reason.
Yeah.
Somebody had a reason for doing what they did. Now, whether this is the right response, there's all that. But if you understand what the reason is, mm-hmm. it tempers some of the pain. So you need to understand what is actually changing. You need to understand why it's happening. And you need to understand the repercussions. And if you're making notes to yourself for how to break this news, it starts with, when this happens, this will be the result.
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent. And there's what's the result on an organizational level. There's what's the result on a personal level. And the challenge for leaders is that the information comes down always with the priority on the organizational level.
Of course.
This is what it means to the organization. When you break it to your people, that's the secondary consideration. They want to know, what does it mean for me? And you'd best have as good an answer as you can have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that all makes sense. The problem is we don't always have all the information.
Right.
And one of the mistakes that leaders make is, if they don't have certain information, they either withhold it completely,
Mm-hmm.
or they act as if they have the information and this is going to happen. And what happens as policies get implemented is things don't always happen the way that we think they're going to. And then if it doesn't match what you've told your people, they say, you lied to us, you weasel.
Right. Well,
you may not have intentionally, you may have tried to spare their feelings. You may have tried not to make a situation worse by saying this could also happen. But you also are perceived as not having told them the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you did it for all the right reasons, and you did it to be a good person, and it's still going to blow up in your face.
I think that's just par and course for being a leader, to be honest.
Well, but that's, how often have we said on this show, time after time, leadership first, location second? Like, right. Yes, this is Breaking Bad News, Leadership 101. And when people aren't there, they can't look at each other and go, what the hell? They can't, right? The text messages and the chats are going crazy, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and you can't physically see everybody's eyes. Right. If you call everybody into the bullpen, into the cube farm, and you make an announcement, you can see so-and-so looks stunned, so-and-so is ticked off, so-and-so just looks confused.
Yeah.
And you can respond accordingly. You don't have that benefit unless it's a very small team and you're on camera. And even then, you're so busy delivering the message that you may not see everything that's going on.
Well, and that's what I was getting ready to say too. I mean, even if you do have a small team, maybe everybody's on camera. Okay, I might look fine here, but you don't know that my foot's shaking under my desk.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Which means that delivering the message is only part of it. I mean, one of the things that we've taught at the Kevin Eikenberry Group for 1 billion years, and they've been teaching in the world for much longer than we have walked the earth, is communication is message sent, message received, message understood, and action taken.
Right.
Right. A successful communication sends the message, and whatever you want to have happen happens.
Right.
The problem when you are instituting an emotional or a complex message is that message sent is the only thing you know is going to happen.
Absolutely.
Right. You can say, I sent the message. I held that call. I did that announcement. I sent that email. Yep, you sure did. Yeah. And it's only a quarter of the process.
Yeah. The email went to spam. They didn't watch the video. They didn't attend the call.
It went, exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. So sending the message is only part of it. The second thing is, did they actually hear it?
Right.
Well, the richer the form of communication, the more likely that they are going to it is going to physically hit their ears.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? But we all know the minute you hear something that you don't want to hear, you cease being able to hear it.
Yes.
Right? hey, we're doing a reorg. If you're so busy thinking, that's it, I'm getting fired, I'm getting laid off, this is the end of life as we know it, I am literally not hearing what you're telling me, let alone understanding.
Right. And they might be saying, your department's fine, and you don't have no idea.
So you have to make sure they receive the message clearly, do the best you can to make sure they understand it. And some of that is eliminating the walls that are immediately going to shoot up. If
Right.
you merely focus on the organizational part of this, they are going to be so busy trying to figure out what it means to them. That now, one way to do that, particularly live, is to say, what I'm about to tell you is what we know right now. There's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that might change. So I'm giving you the best information I can at this time. I would ask you to listen to it, and I will answer your questions as best I can.
Yeah.
Because you want to eliminate the barriers so people can at least take the information in. Then you better make darn sure that people understand it. Some of that can happen in the moment, right? It's an all hands meeting. There are questions. Most people will not ask their questions out loud. Most people do not even know what their questions are until they hang up and later. So on a remote or a hybrid team, make sure that there is plenty of opportunity for that instantaneous feedback and connection. Ideally, if your team is small enough, you would schedule one-on-ones immediately. You want to do check-ins. How you doing? What did you hear? What are your questions? And be able to address those as best you can on an individual basis, particularly for those who don't have easy access to you.
Right.
And again, you want to be empathetic. I know this is hard. That's not the same as sympathetic. I know, I think it sucks too, is not helpful. Well,
so pivoting a little bit, like, should managers even be transparent with their own reservations on stuff? Like, if I'm a leader and I hate this idea, should I tell them?
I think it is appropriate to say, I have questions myself about this.
Yeah.
When I first heard it, I had some concerns. I hope that I get the answers that I need, and I hope that I pass those, and I will let you know when I have those answers.
Mm-hmm.
It is not, it is helpful to empathize. It is not helpful to throw the company under the bus.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, on a purely mercenary, selfish level, you as the leader are going to be at least partially responsible for the enforcement and coaching and training and helping people make this change. If they know that you're against it,
mm-hmm.
First of all, are your efforts really going to be good faith efforts to make it happen?
Right.
And secondly, they know you think it's nonsense, so why should they bother? It is going to be 3 times harder to implement the change than it would have been if people were merely unhappy. So, this goes back to understanding the change, right? Why is it happening? I understand why the company is doing what it's doing. I don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with it. But I better be able to say when somebody says, why are they doing this? And there's a difference between the stock is tanking and they need to shore up the numbers, and the stock is tanking and so they're throwing us overboard. Those are 2 very different ways of explaining what's going on.
One of them is okay and the other one is definitely not.
And it's perfectly natural. I mean, transparency is important in that it creates trust,
mm-hmm.
right? Hey, I don't know exactly what's going to happen either. We will figure it out together.
Right. So hypothetically speaking, like, if managers have a bunch of pushback from their teams about a decision, and it's something maybe they personally disagree with, how they've decided to share that with their team. Hopefully they take some of
Mhm.
our advice from this episode. But how do managers handle that pushback? Because, they still need to support what the decision was.
Well, when the pushback happens,
Mhm.
there's a couple of things. First of all, it needs to be heard, and people need to know that it is being heard. And of course, in a remote environment, that might be written. So you obviously want to have one-on-ones with people,
Of course.
but maybe there is a special Slack or Teams chat for questions about this.
Mhm.
Right? You want to take that information because some of the information you're going to be able to answer and you're going to be able to diffuse the drama pretty much right away. There are going to be questions, especially if you don't have the answer, that it is your job as a manager to go up the hill and get the answers that you can get. Even if the answer is, when are the layoffs going to start?
It's still important to know that answer.
They got to know that.
Yeah. And we've
Right.
talked about this on this show before too, but I want to reiterate because you've kind of touched on this already. But this idea of, if you get asked a question and you don't know, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'm going to go find out. Do not make stuff
Absolutely.
up.
This is where you get accused of lying.
Yeah.
Because if you try to gloss over the question, or you kind of think this is the right answer,
Mhm.
and so you give it because you want to sound like you know what you're doing, you don't want to sound like an idiot, it's going to blow back on you if that answer turns out not to be true.
Right. And we as a society just need to get better about saying, I don't know, but I'm going to go find out.
We as human beings, just in general, right? Again, most of what we've talked about is conveying bad news or handling conflict 101, regardless of where
Yeah.
you are. I think as we near the end of our time in a remote or a hybrid environment, there are a couple of very specific differences. Number one is you want to make sure that the whole team gets as much information as they can as a team. It's very tempting, for example, to call the people in the office together, make the announcement, and then have a call for the
Right.
people who aren't. It's a very natural, kind of instinctive thing to do, but the team needs to hear it as a team.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, is don't fall into that trap. It should be delivered as richly as possible, and it needs a backup. It needs to have a place that people can go back and now read it
Mhm.
for themselves, right? When the drama has settled or they're a little calmer, and they can read it and take a look, because then they may get some of their questions answered, other questions may arise.
Right.
And there needs to be an ongoing conversation. It's not like you can just say, well, told them, and that's it.
Right.
Right? It's going to be an ongoing conversation. And then you need to figure out, what training are people going to need? What are they going to need to know? Some of it contextual, some of it, attitude. Here's what's going to happen. And there may be things they need to do differently. What are those things? And get that training in place as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Wayne, it sounds like we could have talked about this for a lot longer than now, but unfortunately we are out of time. But
someday when you are a manager, young lady, you will learn. This is the bane. There are two things: implementing policies that you yourself might not agree with, and having to let people go. These are the hardest things that a manager has to do.
we
And
may
they
want to
have
talk
to
about
do
that
it.
second one on another episode sometime. 'Cause
Absolutely.
That might be really important. And listeners, if you're listening right now and you're like, yeah, I want to hear that, please let us know. So that way we know that needs to go higher up on our list. But listeners, thank you so much for listening to the Long Distance Work Life. For show notes, transcripts, and other resources, make sure to visit longdistanceworklife.com. If you haven't yet, Subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. And if you're on Apple or Spotify, please give us a rating and review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Feel free to contact us via email or LinkedIn with the links in our show notes, and let us know you listened to this episode, or even suggest a topic for Wayne and I to tackle in a future episode, like we already mentioned. We would love to hear from you. And before we go, I want to let you know that the second edition of the Long Distance Leader is now available for pre-order. For those of you watching, Wayne has a copy of it right in here, and it will be launching on September 17th. This updated guide is perfect for navigating today's remote and hybrid work environments. With new principles and proven strategies, Kevin Eikenberry and Wayne Trammell show you how to lead effectively no matter where your team is located. Don't miss out on the latest insights and exercises designed to boost productivity and morale. Pre-order your copy now at longdistanceworklife.com/LDL and strengthen your remote leadership skills today. Thank you so much for joining us. And as Wayne likes to say, don't let the weasels get you down.